Anyway, let's get into some news. You could probably spend a 3-hour show just going through the news, but I picked a few bits out during the week. Here are some of them. The United States could reap billions in online sales tax revenue. And this is after a nation's top court ruled last Thursday that e-commerce companies could be required to collect the money, and even if they have no physical presence in a state. So this is going to shake up the the online no tax malarkey. Of course, some states already apply tax, but a lot more don't. And anyway, the Supreme Court's ruling in favour of South Dakota and against Wayfair and 2 other online retailers was a victory for state governments and a boost for brick and mortar stores. And the effect is expected to be positive and widespread because 45 states imposes sales taxes and until now were barred from requiring those companies to collect remote sales tax. That meant that state and local governments lost as much as $13 billion of revenue in 2017. Now, states can push ahead with legislation requiring companies to collect and remit sales tax for goods bought online, whether it's in the state or not. Now, the states that rely more heavily on sales tax as opposed to personal income tax, for instance, will be the big winners here and could see real budget gains if they follow South Dakota's example. It is suggested that 24 states and their local governments could see tax revenue gains of at least 1%. And for large states like Texas, the combined state and local revenue growth could be as high as $1.2 billion per year and will likely grow over time. Now, you got Washington, Florida, South Dakota, Nevada, and Tennessee get more than half of their total revenue from sales tax, which means big gains could be used in the stores. An analysis by Barclays found that Louisiana would get an estimated 3% bump in total tax receipts if it begins forcing out-of-state online retailers to collect sales tax. Oklahoma is another one expected to have a reasonable gain of 2.7%. It doesn't apply to all, particularly the ones that don't charge sales tax like Alaska, Delaware, Montana, New Hampshire and Oregon. New Hampshire's lack of sales tax is a competitive advantage for our state, and this decision will unfairly punish small businesses that are a backbone of our economy, said Senator Maggie Hassan in a statement on Thursday. We covered fashion designer. Well, that's what she was known as, labelled as anyway. Of course, she was also involved with Clinton and Haiti and shenanigans that went on there. Well, of course, she, according to the mainstream media, committed suicide. Now her father has died last Wednesday, and a family spokesman said just as his daughter's funeral in Kansas City was about to start, unfortunately, the father passed away as well, 2 minutes before the funeral mass. Things that make you go, The House Republican immigration overhaul dangled precariously last Thursday. Of course, it's already been voted upon, and it's set for more fun and games. Imperiled by stubborn differences between conservative and moderate factions, and by President Donald Trump's running commentary about a bill he only half-heartedly supported and then suggests would never become law. And Republican leaders were twice forced to postpone the final voting, first until Friday and then pushing it to next week, which was today. Negotiators had made a last-ditch push for support, and they were trying to persuade colleagues to seize the moment and tackle immigration problems by approving the bill, which includes $25 billion for Trump's border wall and a path to citizenship for young immigrants who have lived in the US illegally since childhood. The House Majority Whip Steve Scalise said Thursday evening that they were trying to keep consensus on the legislation. I believe that bill failed today. I've not had a chance to catch up with too much of the news, apart from a rather bizarre shooting, which we'll cover later. Now, part of what's been going on with the Manor World Holding Trust and the quantum system, what this has forced in many aspects is the banks to fly straight or face the consequences. And in the past week, they have basically had fiscal tests known as annual stress tests, and the 35 largest US banks have all cleared the first stage of will become an annual stress test, showing they will be able to maintain enough capital in an extreme recession to meet regulatory requirements. Now, although the banks, including household names like JP Morgan, Citigroup and Bank of America, would suffer about $578 billion in total losses in the Fed's most severe scenario to date, their level of high-quality capital will be substantially higher than the threshold that regulators demand, and higher levels than are seen immediately leading up to the 2007-2009 crisis, according to the Fed. Reality is they haven't got much at the moment, real reality. But that could all change. It makes me laugh how he keeps mentioning the 2007-2009 crisis like it all ended in 2009. It's still ongoing. Perhaps he meant 2019. Where are we next? France. Another chief executive managers being brought to justice, this time in France's telecom company. The chief executive and 6 other managers are to stand trial over a spate of suicides amongst their staff since the late 2000s. Prosecutors have long claimed they presided over a culture of harassment at the firm that led to at least 19 employees to kill themselves. Really? And they've been accused of moral harassment, and ex-boss Didier Lombard and his fellow defendants deny their tough restructuring measures in 2006 were to blame for the subsequent loss of life. And a push for greater efficiency came 2 years after the company was privatised. Doesn't it just? Mr. Lombard was trying to cut 22,000 jobs and retrain at least 10,000 workers, and stated, "I'll get them out one way or another, through the window or through the door," he said. Really? Perhaps Mr. Lombard needs to follow his other bankers and jump from a tall building. Anyway, from 2008 onwards, at least 19 members of staff have taken their own lives, and 12 others have attempted suicide, and 8 others suffered from depression and other related illnesses. Not good. This is what has to change in many aspects of how your company is only as good as your staff, no matter how much people want to control. And if staff aren't happy, your company's not happy and your company suffers. Otherwise, it turns into plantation-style slavery. And that's sadly the way corporate bosses are trained to be that way. It's their way or the highway. And ultimately, it would be nice if, for a major company like Amazon, if everyone walked out. Or Walmart, they don't look after staff particularly well either. Let's see how all the managers get on and the CEOs if the whole staff walked out. They soon may have to rethink the way they treat staff. Where are we next? UN and poverty. Philip G. Alston arrived in Washington on a mission from the UN Human Rights Council to document poverty in America. And at his first meeting, Alston said he was told by a senior State Department official that his findings may influence the United States membership in the human rights body. And of course, America pulled out last week. And a senior official said to me my report could be a factor in whether the US decided or not to stay in the council. And the special rapporteur on extreme poverty and human rights, who declined to name the official, stated, "I think I was being sent a message." 2 other people at the meeting, speaking on condition of anonymity, confirmed Alston's account, and he was kind of threatened. The 20-page Alston report found that the United States has amongst the most chronic rates of poverty among all nations in the developed world, and that President Trump's policies are likely to exacerbate them. I wouldn't say that, but a lot needs to change. Liberal critics, whoever liberals are, seized on Alston's findings to say that the Trump administration was failing to help the nation's poorest citizens. What about Obama? What did he do? Jack, arguing that when one of the world's wealthiest countries does very little about the fact that 40 million of its citizens live in poverty, Actually, it was 46 million under Obama, so it's gone down 6 million. But then that won't be recognised, will it? It doesn't suit the purpose. And it's entirely appropriate for the reasons to be scrutinised. The report said the United States has the highest rate of youth poverty, infant mortality, incarceration, income inequality and obesity among all countries in the developed world, as well as 40 million people living in poverty. Now, most of these statistics, funny enough, what they fail to take into account is these were statistics taken from a report in 2016, which is before Trump was elected. And yet Trump gets the blame. Distorted journalism. We're going to see a lot of that. You've been warned that that would take place, and it's starting to ramp up. But we'll find the truth and we'll put it out. Even as growth ramps up to what could be the fastest rate since before the financial crisis, economists are worried that a trade war could tip the US into a significant slowdown or even a recession. Again, it's selective, isn't it? Haven't we been in a slowdown for the last 30 years? Where have all the manufacturing jobs gone? Could that be because of those tariffs? Yes, it was. This has been going on forever. Remember the story in Russia about the grain, and all the American farmers couldn't sell it because they had looted it all for free in Russia, 1919. It just keeps repeating. Now, fears over a GDP pullback comes as President Donald Trump threatens another round of more severe tariffs aimed at both China and the European Union. Well, they've been looting this country for long enough. He's just stopped it. The loss in jobs because of the tariffs can quite quickly be replaced with an opening of the Manor World Holding Trust and all the projects, and a return to a manufacturing-based country, not service, minimum wage, job-oriented like we are now. 83% is service. 83% of all American jobs is the service industry. In other words, minimum wage. And according to the report, the worry is that the duties could spark a larger global trade war that triggers inflation and kills US growth just as it appears to be accelerating out of its post-crisis malaise. Well, you can't have it both ways. They've been saying on the Portal people have been saying that the growth is stagnating. Now they're saying it's accelerating, but it doesn't suit the purpose. These people are the Portal people. You know, they can continue to push their fear porn, or they can get on board with the Manor World Holding Trust and also American sovereignty. Because then we don't have any problems. We can solve and fix everything in-house. And if the rest of the world then wants to trade with us, fine. But we're not getting raped like we have been for the last 100 years. Something all women in the Western world takes for granted. But it doesn't always apply around the rest of the world. I find it bizarre. It's taken until 2018. But as of midnight local time, Saturday, Saudi Arabia women have been allowed to drive for the first time. Unbelievable. The change was announced last September, and Saudi Arabia issued the first licenses to women early this month. It was the only country left in the world where women could not drive and families had to hire private chauffeurs for female relatives. However, the move comes amid an intensified crackdown on activists who campaigned for the right to drive. You're campaigning a degree and then you crack down on the activists. There's always got to be something to control or block, isn't there? And at least 8 women's rights activists are being detained and could face trial in a counter-terrorism court and a long prison sentence for their activism. And this is according to the human rights group Amnesty International. How can you continue to keep them in court or in jail when you've already passed the bill that they were complaining about? Mad world. Iraq has decided to fight back as well, and it has killed 45 Islamic State group militants this week, and among them some senior leaders in an airstrike in eastern Syria. And the strike targeted 3 houses connected by a trench where ISIS leaders were meeting in the town of Hajin. And the Euphrates Valley area is one of the last parts of Syria that is still under ISIS control. It won't be lasting long. Those killed include the ISIS Deputy War Minister, a media chief, its police chief and leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi's personal courier. And the Iraqi military has been cooperating with the Syrian government in the fight against the militants who are holding out in areas along the border between the two countries. 98% of territory that was once claimed by ISIS across Iraq and Syria has now been recaptured. Facebook comes under fire again. But Facebook information and sensitive Facebook information for up to 120 million users was put at risk for years by leaky quiz application company called NameTests.com. And this was disclosed today by a security researcher and proving what many experts previously suspected. Cambridge Analytica was the tip of the iceberg. Oops. Now, Inti Kukale, an ethical hacker and a bug bounty hunter, found that anyone could have accessed the Facebook profile information of users signed up to one of the many big quizzes being circulated via the application. And he discovered that the data, which included names, date of birth, posts, statuses, pictures and friends lists, could be compromised even after the apps were deleted. Now, the researcher himself uploaded footage of the security issue to YouTube, said in a blog post he was shocked to find that the website would fetch a user's Facebook information and display it on an external web page configured in a way so that it could be accessed and also exploited by literally anyone. In a normal situation, other websites should not be able to access this information. I would suggest getting rid of all apps that are on Facebook. I know some people like to play games, but you have no idea what you're getting yourself into. And that's what all the what appears to be fun, where they ask a range of questions. What's your favourite this and favourite that? And that's all data mining for advertisements and worse. Don't fill in anything. You know, if you're going to go on Facebook, just pass comments. That's bad enough, and that's why we set up the MeWe. But please get rid of all the apps off Facebook. Vatican. Another one's been sentenced. Former Vatican diplomat this time has been sentenced to 5 years in prison for child pornography offences. Monsignor Carlo Alberto Capella pleaded guilty in the Vatican court, which heard that dozens of pornographic photos and videos were found on his mobile phone. He said he had suffered a personal crisis while working at the Vatican Embassy in Washington, D.C., and the priest was recalled from America last year after authorities notified the Vatican of their suspicions. Now, the US had asked for Capella's diplomatic immunity to be lifted so that he could face charges there, and Canadian police later issued an arrest warrant for Capella, who is an Italian, and the former diplomat will serve his sentence in the Vatican's small prison, which no one can access to see whether he's actually serving it or not. And he also has to pay a fine of €5,000, which is about $5,800, which will no go to come out of the people's donations. No time for them people. White House press secretary Sarah Sanders was kicked out of a restaurant on Friday because she works for Donald Trump, really. You have to laugh, don't you? Anyway, the co-owner of the Red Hen in Lexington, Virginia, the Centre for Unintelligence, kind of fitting, really. Anyway, the Red Hen, I'm just wondering whether this is a counter-programme to the Blue Chickens group, asked Ms. Sanders and her family to leave as a protest against the Trump administration. Where were people when Bush was in? You know, who likes that man or that family? Where were these people when Obama was in? Did they ever do anything for the people? It's unbelievable. Ms. Sanders tweeted that her actions say far more about the owner of the Red Hen than about her. The woman thought that Ms. Sanders worked for an inhumane and unethical administration. He thinks she's not very bright, and certainly is listening to the portal people for far too much. And this incident comes days after Homeland Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen was booed at a Mexican restaurant in Washington, D.C. Well, what this is an example of is the portal people, again, and how they are able to spin the narrative, and unfortunately far too many sheep will follow their behaviour. It's why we have to bring the mainstream media down, and why we have to force those people who are spitting out lies and complete also bullshittery off our TV screens. You don't have to be violent, you just have to tell them we don't want them, go away. Because this is what they're doing. They're forcing people on the one hand into a false reality and a false narrative, all designed while they sit there waiting for the solution. Public react, they have the solution waiting. And they're trying to set up a civil war in America. We are watching closely over the weekend, trust me. But it's essential that we, the people, and particularly the alternative media, gets rid of mainstream media altogether. We can't wait for governments to do anything. Trump's already said these people are liars and deceivers, and yet people still watching. Why? Stockholm Syndrome. As soon as you spend your time, instead of ranting at the TV, which I don't know some of our members do, and the news comes on, or should I say Langley propaganda, go and use your anger and take it out on their Twitter pages or whatever other apps that they have now. We can force these clowns off here. Just let them know we're not going to tolerate their nonsense. And I've heard that there's been some fun and games with the Red Hen, that they've been boycotted now. You know, when did people all of a sudden become interested in politics again? Was it because the portal people, they told them they had to? It just amazes me. Where were all these protests when Bush was in charge? Mind-boggling. More madness in Texas. Of course, we had the jizz woman last year who wanted to fine men $100 and signed a bill for it if they wanted to masturbate without procreating. And they seem to breed some funny people there. But they've also got issues with employment discrimination in the community. And Stacey Bailey, who is a former teacher at Charlotte Anderson Elementary School in Arlington, Texas, is suing the Mansfield Independent School District for suspending her for discussing her own sexual orientation in the classroom. Really? Now, the 31-year-old art teacher lives in one of the 28 states where it's legal to suspend or fire someone because of his or her sexual identity. Unbelievable. People power, again. This time it's Amazon under fire. Of course, we've had Google under fire, but the people working for Amazon have written to the company's CEO, Jeff Bezos, to protest the sale of the facial recognition tools and other technology to police departments and government agencies. They're not too happy about that and continue to complain, and which has been criticised for enforcing Donald Trump's zero-tolerance policy. This comes into the ICE using the technology, and the Department of Homeland Security. They're making a big fuss over that as well, when people don't know the full details of what's going on with immigrants and who the parents are and who the parents aren't, or maybe they're not even parents at all. But anyway, the mainstream media are focusing on which has been parents separating from the children at the US border, which was, funny enough, a bill signed by the Democrats. But again, the portal people overlooked those things and just spit out narrative. So the Amazon workers have said, "We demand a choice in what we build and a say in how it's used," the letter states. "We learn from history and we understand how IBM Marduk, systems were employed in the 1940s to help Hitler. IBM did not take responsibility then, and by the time their role was understood, it was too late. We, as Amazon staff, will not allow that to happen again. It's time to act now." Now, Holocaust experts claim IBM's German subsidiary directly supplied the Nazis with technology which assisted the operation of concentration camps in Auschwitz and Treblinka. That's why the Amazon are getting a bit pissy. They're complaining now, which is good. Of course, this show's long warned about the use or misuse of technology. On Friday, MSNBC Morning Joe, whatever that means, I don't watch it, and its network contributor Donnie Douche, with a silent bag on the end, said President Donald Trump's voters who support his immigration policies were essentially standing at the border like Nazis. Douche said this can no longer be about who Trump is, it has to be about who we are. If we are working towards November, we can no longer say Trump is the bad guy. If you vote for Trump, you are the bad guy. If you vote for Trump, you are ripping children from parents' arms. And the mistake that we've made in the past is, look at the bad guy over there, look at the bad guy. What the Democrats have to do is make the next election a referendum on not who Trump is, but who you are. That's the big difference. You can no longer, as a voter, because it's not about taxes, it's not even about some abstract term of immigration or nationalism, he added. If you vote for Trump, then you, the voter, you, not Donald Trump, are standing at the border like Nazis, going, you here, you here. And I think we now have to flip it. It's a given, the evilness of Donald Trump. This is what they're putting on TV. Now, on the same broadcast, co-host Joe Scarborough stated President Trump is openly bigoted towards anyone who isn't white and rich and using rhetoric straight out of Adolf Hitler's playbook. So this is what they're putting out in the media. It's because they're losing the narrative, they're trying to rewrite history again in their own image. And this is why I've called for the alternative media to shut these people up and shut them down once and for all. Boycott it, stand outside, make them uncomfortable on Twitter, Facebook, you name it. These people are psychopaths, they're dangerous, and they're pushing people into civil war. That's what they want, so they can declare martial law and bedlam again. So basically what we've got is a guy named Douche, like I said, with a silent bag on the end, which means German, along with host Joe Scarborough, now both using faction-based Langley-style scripts that does a 180 on the narrative and blames everyone else of doing what they, Langley, who let's not forget their name before CIA, was OSS. Coincidence? I think not, following their role in Operation Paperclip and Operation Overcast that was done by them, and then went on with known Nazis like von Braun and the Scheer family, more commonly known as the Bush family, Nazis. But that report was classic agency bullshit, period. So Donny Douchebag and Goodnight Joe, please take a runner off our screens with your bullshit. We don't need it. Don't let the door hit you on the head as you leave, or you might reignite a few of your brain cells and learn some truth for once in your life. Perhaps those two people need to be reminded we've been under the Fourth Reich and the Nazis since 1940, and these goons bring it up now as it's about to be brought down. It's beyond parody. A shooter, allegedly, at this point has killed 5 people today and wounded others at a newspaper in Annapolis, Maryland. And the police said the suspect was in custody, and a reporter at the Capital Gazette tweeted that a single gunman fired into the newsroom and shot multiple employees. And Phil Davis, who covers the courts and crime for the newspaper, tweeted that the shooter fired through the glass doors into the office, and a single shooter shot multiple people at my office, some of whom are dead. I think the clues in there, why did he keep mentioning single shooter, single gunman, single shooter, single gunman 3 times in 5 lines? Of course it may be. I suspect This is setting the stage for the planned riot at the weekend, and this person will be likely accused of being a Trump supporter. We'll see what unfolds in the next 24, 48 hours. But I think this is a staged event to set a narrative for the so-called protest riots against Trump planned over the weekend, and reinforced by many of the so-called stars and mainstream media calling death for Trump. You know, why aren't these people being rounded up? You have to ask. Asking for the president to be killed and allowed to walk around. Something has to stop, and quickly.